Did you know that? Hmm? Well, here's the thing. In 2015 to 2017, enterprises were cautiously starting to experiment with this crazy blockchain thing. You know, the same folks running the world didn't want to be left out while all this crypto chaos was unfolding. They had some ideas about how distributed ledger technology could shake up industries, but they also had a few concerns. See, they liked the idea of smart contracts and transparent ledgers, but their priority was getting something working ASAP, not necessarily building on the most decentralized public network. And that's where this company comes in. It's a company. Wait, hold up. Let's start at the beginning. In 2014, Joseph Lubin founded ConsenSys after meeting Vitalik Buterin and Gavin Wood at a conference in Miami. He saw the potential of Ethereum and brought his Wall Street pedigree to the table. Now you might be thinking, what did Wall Street ever do for us? Well, stay tuned and you'll see. But for now, let's focus on Joe. He wanted to build a bridge between the Wild West of blockchain development and the highly regulated world of global finance. So enter Quorum. In 2016, JPMorgan was messing around with blockchain tech and found that, yeah, it was cool and all, but it didn't work on their schedule or meet their security needs. So they forked Ethereum to create their own private permissioned version. This was like the gated community of blockchains. Only invited members could participate, and transactions were recorded but not necessarily shared. It was basically like Ethereum without the Ether part. See what we did there? Anyway, this move surprised many because usually it's the other way around. Banks are notorious for creating highly centralized systems that don't exactly scream decentralization. But in this case, they wanted more control over the tech they were integrating. Now you might be thinking, why wouldn't banks just use regular old Ethereum instead of creating their own private club? Well, it turns out that the public Ethereum network just wasn't cutting it for these big businesses. See, back then in the mid-2010s, it was still pretty slow and expensive to use Ethereum, especially for large transactions. Plus, they didn't really care about being completely decentralized. For them, it was more important to have a private network where they could share data and settle trades faster. Not to mention they had some strict regulations to comply with, and frankly, the public Ethereum network didn't seem too concerned about things like regulatory compliance or data privacy. And to make matters worse, this was right around the time when enterprise blockchain was starting to gain some traction. IBM was talking about it. Walmart was piloting it. Big names like that were starting to take notice. But if these companies were going to use blockchain tech to transform industries, they needed something that worked better for them. That's where the private or permission blockchain came in. But hold on a second. If these networks weren't public or permissionless, were they really blockchains? We'll get to that in a bit. For now, let's dive into how this played out with Ethereum and its enterprise offshoot. Back in the early days of Ethereum, Vitalik often said that he wanted the protocol to be used as much as the internet. But he also recognized that the internet and the World Wide Web were very different beasts. The internet was the infrastructure and the web was built on top of it. A website can exist without the internet, but the internet couldn't support websites. The same idea applied to Ethereum. Some people would use the blockchain as the base layer, while others would create applications on top of it. JPMorgan took this idea to the next level with Quorum. By controlling the network, they could tailor it to fit their needs, whether that meant adding new features or tweaking existing ones. However, there was a trade-off. By sacrificing some decentralization, they gained more control over the network. And let's face it, when you're dealing with Wall Street, control is everything. Meanwhile, ConsenSys went in a different direction. They created a suite of tools to help developers build on the public Ethereum network. Infura, for example, is a service that allows developers to connect to the Ethereum network and build applications on top of it. Codify, on the other hand, provides tools for managing digital assets. Basically, ConsenSys was like the Airbnb of enterprise Ethereum. Just as Airbnb allowed everyday people to monetize their spare rooms, ConsenSys allowed businesses to tap into the power of the Ethereum network without having to run their own nodes or worry about things like security and scalability. As more and more businesses started using these tools, the Ethereum network grew and became more valuable. It was a win-win situation. ConsenSys made money by providing valuable services to businesses, and the Ethereum network benefited from the increased activity. So far, so good, right? But it wasn't long before things got a little complicated. See, as the popularity of Ethereum grew, so did the number of users on the network. This meant that transaction fees started to rise and the network became more congested. As a result, many businesses started looking for alternatives to the public Ethereum network, and that's where permissioned blockchains like Quorum came in. These networks allowed businesses to transact privately without having to pay high fees or deal with congestion. Plus, they could tailor the network to fit their specific needs. This trend was only accelerated by the rise of Ethereum competitors like Solana and Polygon. These networks offered fast, cheap transactions and attracted a whole new wave of users. Once again, businesses started looking for alternatives to the crowded and expensive Ethereum network. And guess what? Permission blockchains were there to fill the gap. It was like a game of musical chairs and Ethereum was starting to lose its seat. But wait a second. Doesn't this go against the whole idea of blockchain technology? I mean, if the network isn't public and decentralized, then how is it a blockchain at all? Well, that's a great question and one that has no easy answer. The truth is that blockchain technology is still evolving, and there's no one-size-fits-all solution for everyone. Some people argue that a blockchain must be public and decentralized to be a true blockchain. But others argue that the benefits of blockchain technology can be realized even if the network isn't completely decentralized. Ultimately, it's up to each individual business to decide what level of decentralization is right for them. There's no right or wrong answer. Let's go back to our story about the shipping container. Imagine a world where every time you shipped something, you had to fill out a bunch of paperwork, get it stamped by government officials, and then wait forever to get paid. Not a fun way to run a business. But that's how it was done for centuries until blockchain came along. With blockchain, you could automate much of this process and cut out the middlemen. A smart contract could handle everything from customs to insurance to payment, and do it all automatically. No more waiting around for payments either. With blockchain, you could get paid instantly. The problem was that this was all well and good, but it wasn't exactly easy to implement. You had to deal with different governments, different regulations, and different companies, all of which had different ways of doing things. But if you're a major player in the shipping industry, you can actually change that. You can set the rules of the game. And that's what these companies did. They created a consortium, a group of like-minded companies who all agreed to follow the same rules. They created a blockchain network that worked for them and their partners. Suddenly, the process of shipping goods around the world became much easier and much faster. It's the same story with trade finance, pharmaceutical supply chains, and even tokenized treasury bonds. In each case, a group of companies came together to create a blockchain network that worked for them. This isn't exactly the vision that the blockchain purists had, but it's working for these companies, and that's what matters. So yes, enterprise Ethereum is a thing, and it's alive and well. Companies are using it to solve real-world problems, and it's working. Whether this is the future of blockchain technology remains to be seen. But one thing is for sure, these companies aren't just playing around. They're serious about blockchain, and they're willing to invest the time and money to make it work. Maybe it's not the fully decentralized, permissionless blockchain that some people envisioned, but it's a step in the right direction. And hey, maybe it'll lead to a future where blockchain technology is used to solve even more problems and disrupt even more industries. What's the lesson here? Tech must adapt to business processes, not the other way around. Ethereum embodies this duality, the public Ethereum network, where anyone can build anything they want, and the enterprise versions where companies can tailor the tech to their needs. The evolution of Ethereum shows us that tech isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. It must adapt to the world, not the other way around. And remember, the quietest revolutions are the most powerful. Thanks for watching.